Hey everyone, welcome to my first vlogcast. All the footage in the background is of my terrible gameplay. I love playing video games, but in general I am terrible at them. So, like a lot of people, I've been watching the announcements regarding both the Xbox Series X, PS5, and most recently the new Nvidia RTX 30 series of graphics cards. These days I play primarily on the PS4 because that's where most of my friends play. Any third-party games that they don't buy, I tend to buy for the One X just for the better graphics. I also own a Nintendo Switch and a PC to cover off any other games that aren't covered by the PS4 or Xbox. So on to today's topic. Should I buy the PS5, Xbox Series X, or upgrade my PC? In my mind, this comes down to 4 factors. 1. Budget. 2. Where do my friends play? 3. How much does graphics actually mean to me? And 4. What are the first party titles that I like to play? We still don't have a confirmed price for the PS5 or Xbox Series X. There's been a lot of speculation about the price, and a lot of that speculation lands at around the $400 to $500 mark, or pounds if you're in the UK. For those of us here in Australia, this likely means a cost of around $700 to $800. Now, the one thing, in my opinion, that we do know for sure is whatever the price, it's going to be cheaper than trying to build a PC equivalent. And even if you do build a PC for the same price, probably not going to run the games as well as it would on one of the consoles. So what does that mean for you? Well, assuming that you're going to buy something at launch, you'll need to decide how much your budget actually means to you. It's hard to say for sure until Microsoft and Sony release their pricing as to which console is actually going to be cheaper. So the question here is, do you just go for the cheapest console, or do you go for the one that's more expensive for another reason? Well, that's going to depend on the remaining 3 points we're going to cover. Personally, I'm planning to buy both at launch, but if I had to choose one over the other, I'd start with the PS5. That's not necessarily because I'm a fanboy, although I kind of am. It's also where a lot of my friends play. That, and I'm a huge fan of Sony's first-party studios. So at the end of the day, you need to decide what your personal bang for buck, or for the older viewers, return on investment is. If you play a lot of online games that aren't compatible with cross-platform play, either because they're a first-party title or they just don't support it, it might be worth spending a little more money if that means that you're buying a console that all of your friends are buying. If you play primarily solo, then have a good think about the exclusive lineup for each console. If you don't care either way about the exclusives, then price alone might make your mind up for you. Point 2. Where do my friends play? I touched on this in my first point. If you play a lot of online games, or you can only afford to buy a game every now and then have a think about the console all your friends are buying. For online games, if you're playing a first-party exclusive, whether that be on PlayStation or Xbox, then by default you'll only be able to play online with other people that have that console and game. Now, that aside, many third-party exclusives these days, like Call of Duty or Fortnite, do offer cross-platform support, but you're then limited to the in-game chat to communicate, which can be clunky depending on what you're playing. Let's assume online play doesn't really matter to you, but budget does. You might want to consider buying the console that all of your friends are buying so that you can share and swap games with one another. That's of course assuming that the consoles don't try and lock down games to your account like they tried with the original Xbox One mode of doing things, but given the reactions that were received to that announcement back, I think, in when was the launch, 2013, I doubt either company would try that with this coming generation. So let's move on to point 3. How much does graphics actually mean to me? I mentioned in the intro that I currently play third-party titles on my Xbox. The reason I do this is because to me personally the graphical fidelity of a game does matter. Better still, I'll often play a game like Grounded that's out on both Xbox and PC because I've got Game Pass. I'll play that on my PC because it looks better still on the PC than it does on the Xbox. I know Grounded isn't a third-party title, but it helps illustrate my point here. Now, I'll say third-party titles for 2 reasons, or I'm focusing on third-party titles at this first bit for 2 reasons. The first is, obviously, you're stuck with what game you get when it comes to first-party titles on, depending on the console you bought. But second, as far as first-party titles go, you'll find that the respective companies will be able to squeeze far more out of their consoles because they're only coding with that one console in mind. For example, Horizon Zero Dawn looks amazing on the PS4 Pro and holds up against a game like Gears 5 on the Xbox One X. This despite the fact that the PS4 Pro is a less powerful console. Same could be said for many first-party titles. Having said all of this, if getting the highest FPS and resolution for your .27 KD on COD is the most important to you, then you'll probably want to go with the Xbox Series X, or upgrading your PC to support the new range of Nvidia 30 series cards. This will then come down to your budget, also where your friends play and your perceived bang for buck or ROI. Taking all this into consideration, I still play COD on the PS4 Pro. That's because that's where all my friends play. Sure, it'd look better if I owned COD on Xbox on my One X, or even better still if I play it on PC, but it's just easier for me to play on the same ecosystem as all of my friends. So how much do you actually care about graphics? Well, if the answer's a lot, then if your budget permits, upgrading your PC or buying a new PC be the best way to go. These days most Xbox titles are playable on Windows, and if you have Game Pass and the Windows wireless USB dongle for your Xbox controller, you're all set, even if you prefer controller over mouse and keyboard. Most of you are likely listening to this, however, because you're planning on buying a next-gen console. Let's say your budget means you can only afford to buy either the PS5 or Xbox. Well, on paper the Xbox will give you better graphics, but if graphics is your only consideration, my advice actually would be to wait until close to launch or just after launch. Sure, the Xbox should in theory have the best graphics of the two, but with Microsoft's big statement at the moment and their big sales pitch saying our games will work no matter which console of ours you own, then pretty much all of their titles, much like a third-party title, will have developers coding for a large number of SKUs. Now, what that means is that the graphics might not necessarily look better on an Xbox, despite it being a more powerful console, because they're also writing the same game or taking into consideration that a slower console will also need to run it. Now, there's also some out there that think the PS5's faster SSD will allow for better graphics despite the slower GPU and CPU clock speeds. This is because the information can be delivered just that much faster. Now, all of this is just speculation at this point. To be honest, the only way you'll know for sure which console looks better is once we start to see side-by-side comparison videos of a third-party title on YouTube. And even then, that's going to differ depending on the studio that wrote the game. I find that the likes of Digital Foundry usually do a pretty good comparison video, and having said all of that, the safe money is still probably on the Xbox this generation in terms of better graphics, but that said, pretty soon after we'll see Sony come back with whatever the PS5's equivalent to the PS4 Pro is. On to the final point. What are the first party titles that I like to play? Well, in my mind this should actually be the most important question you ask yourself. Why? Well, because let's be honest, even in current generation games, they look pretty good. Once you start playing something like The Last of Us or Gears of War, you don't really find yourself thinking halfway through the game, man, this is an awesome game, too bad it doesn't look better. So, that being said, what games do you like playing? Well, if you're a fan of Gears or Halo, buy an Xbox or upgrade your PC. Or if you're like anything done by one of the absolute plethora of Sony's first-party studios, then get a PlayStation. Hands down, in my personal opinion, Sony by far has the best first-party lineup, probably followed close second by Nintendo. Now, if you only really play third-party games like Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, Doom, or any of the long list of third-party titles that are available on any console, then go with the system that offers the best graphics and also falls within your budget. Okay, so I haven't even touched on the types of controllers that each console has, or the different types of haptic feedback you'll get, and if that's a consideration for you, perhaps it's worth adding to the list of things you might consider. For the longest time, even though I am primarily a PlayStation gamer, I have always preferred the Xbox controller, to the point where the controller I actually use for my PlayStation is a Razer Raiju, because it fits in my hands better, and to be honest, when you look at it, it looks a lot like an Xbox controller. So also maybe a consideration for you, but not one that I've really put here, because let's be honest, that's a peripheral you can buy after the fact, and there are plenty of hacks out there even on how to use the competition's controller on your preferred system, and I'm sure it'll be the same for next gen. So that's a lot of information over what I consider to be the top 4 points on which system you should choose. So how do you weigh them up? Well, I'd suggest making some sort of table, score each point 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 or something like that, and go out and grab the console that has the highest score for you, assuming your budget allows. Or if you're lucky enough to be able to afford it and you don't have someone in your life to judge how you spend your money, do what I'm doing. Buy all 3 and have fun getting your ass kicked online on every platform. I've listed 4 points in this recording, but to be honest, I'm not saying any of these points should be any more important than the other. I mean, that's something you're going to have to decide for yourself, depending on your personal preference. Thanks for listening. Hope I've helped. See you later, YouTube.